Josh, I think as Forster Products, who's really known, we're really known for our bullet seating die, we should probably talk about seating bullets a little bit because it seems to be something people struggle with off and on. And I personally struggled just this weekend before our match as one of the owners, been working at Forster Products for a while. Really shouldn't be something I run into, but yourself, I mean, you were putting on our match and we came in and talked about it. I mean, have you really personally had issues seating bullets yourself?
Yeah, absolutely, Scott. I mean, I personally have always 99.9% of my reloads have been burger bullets. So historically, I've not seen this ring that we get tech calls and emails about all the time. But you came in flustered after was it your nephew?
Yeah, trying to load for, Connor shoots his 22s at home, and here we're going to go out to this match and we're going to try to get him to punch a target at 800 with a 6.5 Creedmoor.
Yeah. So you come in angry, hey, I'm denting bullets. I'm getting the same problem that these customers are mentioning, and so lately we've been doing a lot of testing with amp press and seeing what different processes we can do to the brass to kind of eliminate that or see if we can eliminate that. So we're like, well, let's throw this brass use sized under the amp and see what it gives us. Well, sure enough.
Honestly, I was upset, but honestly a little excited because it's, we've definitely had a customer say, well, okay, I'm shooting a 7 PRC with a 180 ELD and it's getting a ring, and then I go back in and size a case with an incredible amount of neck tension and seat a 80 ELD and have zero problems. Yeah. So like that inability to recreate their issue is frustrating. Well, here it was super frustrating because I wanted to have it done in about 2 minutes, but it took longer than that. But in a way, kind of exciting because we can actually sit down and test something, a real life problem there.
Yep. So the brass you had sized, I think had been a couple times fired, and we had 2.5 thou neck tension.
Right.
With the neck tension gauge there, and we decided to throw it under the amp and see what it was, and sure enough, and kind of with our tests, we've been seeing anything over like 125 pounds of seating force on the amp kind of is our threshold to where we kind of start to see a ring or a dent in that bullet. So with your brass and that particular bullet, we had 150, 160 pounds of pressure. We're like, whoa, what's going on here? We just resized this brass the last time, and we weren't getting any marks on this bullet.
So then I have to go back and tell you about all the things that I was doing that you shouldn't do. I mean, because I was trying to do it in a hurry, I just sized, seated. My case prep was extremely minimal. But yeah, it's 150 pounds of pressure. It's like, well, this is, just a couple times fired brass has the right amount of neck tension, and you really shouldn't see that amount of pressure. I mean, out of you load how many rounds a year?
I've been averaging like 8,000 rounds of precision rifle the last 3-4 years.
And what kind of pressures do you see on average when you're seating yours?
Yeah, like 50 to 60 pounds is pretty average.
And so, I mean, your cases truly have been fired a lot more times than that brass. And, I mean, your process is better, but you have about that same neck tension that we're running.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I run 2.5 thousands.
Right.
Interference fit, or, a lot of people refer to it as neck tension, but we know it's truly an interference fit. So just for terminology, we're using neck tension here.
Yeah, but, please shoot us a comment and tell us we're calling it wrong, because that's but yeah, we're just using that common term. So, we got the brass in 150 pounds of pressure. So I guess what'd you look at from there then?
Well, from our recent testing, we're like, well, let's just try going to a bigger expander ball and lowering that tension and see what that does. And sure enough, that dropped at about 30 pounds, but you're still in that 120 to 130 pressure range. So another technique we like to use is, let's brush the inside of the necks. So now with, 1 thou less tension than we had with the setup you had and brushing the necks. We dropped it to around 100, maybe around 90, so that still dropped it quite a bit just itself, just running a drill in there, a couple
Right.
times, quick in and out, get the rough.
Not making it squeaky clean.
Right. Yeah.
You know.
We weren't trying to totally scrub it clean where you get that new brass feeling of, too clean, it gets stickier yet.
Right.
So brand new brass has been an issue as well.
Right.
We have some processes for that too. So
The analogy I always like to use for that when it's super clean is like if you go to try to run and slide across that gym floor
Yep.
after they just scrubbed her down,
Yep.
I could probably fall on my face pretty easy.
Sure.
And that's just a lot of friction force
Yep.
there.
Yep.
Definitely not taking my shirt off and diving across there.
Yeah. Yep. So that lowered our pressure quite a bit, but then we were also like, well, I'm going to take this brass home and anneal it tonight and come back and see what our results are with the same exact setup. Well, just annealing it, that dropped it another 20 or 30 pounds. So now this brass with 1.5 thou tension, annealed, running a brush through it, we're at 70 pounds of pressure. And
Yeah.
that's right where I'd expect it, for this brass and that bullet.
And then just cosmetically looking at the bullet itself, you had a contact mark, which is usual wherever. It's
Very minor contact
very
mark
minor.
from the stem
Yeah.
where it makes contact, but there certainly was no dent that you
Right.
showed me that Monday morning when you came in, and
right.
yeah,
So if I would have just probably at home ran a brush through, at least initially, that would have probably really helped me out quite a bit.
in
Now-
this particular test,
Right.
it certainly
Right.
lowered it some. Now,
Obviously,
I'm
I
not saying it's not
Yeah.
not going to work for everybody.
Right.
It's not the same scenario for everything, and in our tests we've done in the past, just changing brass or changing the bullet you use to seat, it's like that fluctuates the pressures a lot too.
Right.
So.
Right. Because this was all, we kind of did this test. I mean, I forced you to do this test because we wanted to figure it out for myself there.
Yeah.
Because actually, me and Connor loaded some rounds. And truthfully, I took an older seating stem that I had that has more of a taper on the inside, and I was able to get rid of the huge indent, but I flared that stem out. It was binding in that bullet channel.
Yeah.
And so, you look at so that kind of brings us to somewhat the evolution and the design of that Forster cedar die, is it's got that spring-loaded chamber. It has a bullet channel in the top that we machined to be just 0.5 thousandths over the bullet diameter, and it's all cut with a one-piece reamer. Well, that holds everything super straight, but having that channel be just that 0.5 thousandths over bullet diameter. So this was 6.5 Creedmoor. So bullet diameter is 264. We machine that to 264.5. If I have my seating stem in there with any wall thickness whatsoever, so let's say it's easy math, 20 thousandths wall. Well, now I'm already down 20 thousandths per side. I'm already down 40 thousandths, and 20 thousandths isn't super thick. So it makes our contact area small. So in any of those chambered style cedars like that, your margin of error on things is low. That stem flares out and binds, you're in trouble. You make that wall thicker, now you're going to hit higher up on the bullet, where as we get these longer and longer bullets, they're less supported under the jacket. You shoot a lot of burgers.
Yep. Yeah.
Which is a more, it's a harder jacketed bullet. So could be a reason that you see some less issues in your seeding process potentially.
Yeah, and I don't know why, but it seems like all the tests we do, the burgers, no matter what brass process you do or brass you use manufacturer-wise, it is always lower than the comparison.
Right.
And I don't know if it's what the jacket's made of.
Right.
Like a metallurgy thing, or it's not as sticky or something there. But yeah, they just seem to they seat with less pressure, and they do seem harder. So I don't see that. I never see a witness mark on my reloads.
Right. So that's when we get a customer calling in and says, I'm denting my burgers. We got something going on.
Which is like 0.1% of the
yeah,
time. You know?
Right.
But
right.
But yeah.
And that's not really to put, when we're talking metallurgy of a bullet between a Sierra or a Hornady, it's not really to put that down as a bad bullet to use. We just might have to approach the way we load those a little bit differently than the burger. We seem to struggle more with some of the like Hornady ELD bullets in terms of getting that dent. But I mean, you kind of did another test, kind of testing the ranges of bullets. Like you say, burgers were the lowest. Hornady was one of the highest. Mm-hmm. So what did you do with that test, though, as we were kind of spanning those different bullets? And
yeah, I kind of set up my normal load process. It wasn't my exact brass, but I used my process and kind of used 3 different bullet makers, and just seeing with processing the brass the same exact way, what would those pressure differences be if there were any? And burgers were the lowest, Sierras, and then for some reason Hornady's just seated with more pressure than all of them. So we're like, okay, what could we do to possibly lower that? Because Hornady still makes a great bullet,
right?
And obviously they're accurate. But if guys are getting that dent, they think it's critical that we can't have that.
They're rightfully not happy about it,
and I wouldn't be either.
Right,
right, certainly. So I started playing with neck tensions and things like this. So I went down as far as like half to 1 thou of tension. Now you're kind of playing with fire when you get to half, because you can kind of get loosey goosey there, and then your numbers get really erratic as far as you'll have a major low and then a spike or so. So I don't recommend that, and that's really hard to kind of measure that. But at 1 thou, we really got the pressure of the Hornadies in a lot better spot. But the
now,
interesting
Josh,
thing was,
if Grandpa says I should load with 2,000ths neck tension, that's every book I read says that. So I mean, if I go down to 1,000ths tension and I put that box in the back of my truck and we head out west and we're bouncing up the mountain, am I worried then that my bullet's going to come out of the case?
Historically, I would look you in the eyes and say, do not run 1 thou neck tension. It's, I read the same books he did or you did.
Yeah.
But we came up with a way to test how much force it would take to knock that bullet back out after it's been seated. And what we kind of found is no matter where that pressure was, we always had about a 20% increase to get the bullet to release back out of the case. So, even if we're seating at, and guys aren't going to know this unless they have an amp, but at 1 thou, we got that Hornady way lower, down in that 70, 80 range where we want to be. And to get it out, it still took 100 pounds of pressure. Whereas, even my burgers that seat at 50, it takes them about 70 pounds to get them out. So it's telling me if it's going to take that much to get it out, I'm not too concerned about that anymore.
Yeah. And I think say I don't have an amp and I've got I'm setting my cases to 1,000ths neck tension. Is there a hillbilly way I can test if my bullet's going to not move in that case?
Certainly. I mean, it's not proven by any means, but I mean, take that thing and jam it against your table. If you put a lot of force on that and it's not moving, I doubt it's going to move when you're going up that mountain bouncing around.
You want me to crush the tip of my A-tip into my wife's kitchen table?
That's on you.
But, yeah.
You can burn one. Burn one and see. But
that force, that bullet shouldn't encounter any other way. I mean, if I did that personally, I'm like, and it didn't move, I'd take my datum dial out and measure ogive to base and before and after, and it didn't move. I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Yep, absolutely.
So you did that and measured those, and I mean I know after you did that, and you're saying 1,000's tension. I've certainly talked to some customers, and we've done some like, okay, I'm running this ELD, I'm getting this. Let me send you an expander ball, and let's try it. And it has worked in some cases, but this is reloading. Your variables and stuff are pretty insurmountable. And if I'm, I've been shooting this forever, and it works really well. My feet, I've got low SDs and everything. You talking to me into going to 1,000's tension might be pretty hard to do. And I wouldn't, you're a PRS pro shooter. If you called me up at Forster and said you were having that problem, and I said to you, actually, let me in my office tell you how to fix this, and what you're going to do is change your process before this next match at K&M. How are you feeling about that?
Well, that's something we didn't really hit on. It's definitely something you're going to want to test yourself. And there's no promise that rifle or that bullet likes 1 thou neck tension or 3 thou neck tension. And that's kind of the fun in the reloading game is figuring out what that barrel likes and whatnot. And something else I didn't really hit on was after we annealed those cases also.
Oh.
And you're talking about, that brass difference after annealing, or the expander balls, I should say, sending out a bigger expander ball to customers.
Yeah.
When we put the 264 ball in your die and we didn't have them annealed yet, that brass came out to like 1.5 thou tension still. Whereas after I annealed, so again, this could correlate to why we dropped some pressure, but after that brass was softened, then it didn't have as much spring back from going into that die. And then when it gets ran over that expander ball, yours actually then measured like, right at 1 thou of tension then. So it almost dropped at 0.5 thou just by that annealing process and that softer brass. And
the important thing, a lesson learned for me from that is this: measure your crap. I mean, like, just because you change something, you better measure it to be sure it stayed what you want it to be. I mean, like you said, if you're finicky, 1,000's tension was fine, but 0.5 thousandths is not. Do you know how little 0.5 thousandths is?
That's very hard to measure too.
Oh my gosh, yeah. You're not going to back the calipers of that into your case neck and find that,
Well, and the other thing too is, that was our standard full length sizing die. So that neck dimension is actually different. So say we did that, gave a guy a bigger ball that may have a bushing die or a hone die already that's not working that neck as much when it gets ran up into that die, he could have a variance too. So, having the right tools to measure that, and every case is super, specific to what you're working with.
Yeah, it's you're not going to call Josh at Forster and you're going to say, absolutely, solved your problem. I'm sending in this ball. You're good to go. That's just not in the cards. But at least now, from some of the testing we're doing, we've got some more tools in our tool chest to look at, because.
Well, and there is so many variables. And look at just what running a drill, a 6.5 brush, nylon brush through the necks of your cases dropped to 20, 30 pounds.
Right.
It's like, wow, okay.
And
there's an option, try this, try that.
Right. And this has been, I mean, historically, Forster has been messing with the seating stem for a long time, and we're going to continue. We have to, because if you look at pull an old Forster seating stem, there is just like no clearance for the tip. Why? Because bullets were short and stubby. There was no need to worry about that. So as bullets have gotten longer, you've needed to open up that cup some. So kind of the way Forster did it was just it kept increasing that angle within the stem, which is fine, works really well, but there's like not too many bullets that are profiled the same. So, some bullets would hit just because the base of the bullets now of the seating stem is opened up. Not every bullet's hitting way at the bottom. Some are hitting up higher inside that taper. Well, then you're hitting higher up on the bullet, a less supported portion of the jacket, and now we're getting a ring there.
Yeah.
Or now I'm hitting at the very end of that taper, where because we're constrained by the diameter wanting to hold it straight in that channel, now we've got a super sharp edge, or it's just not as, not as solid. Like like where I flared that stem out, it's kind of like kicking the wall with your toe. I mean, you don't have to do it I don't have to hit that cabinet very hard walking to the bathroom on my little toe to make me start screaming. Same with that seating stem. I mean, and once that stem's flared out and binding in there, I mean, I was in this scenario loading for that, I was screwed. I mean, I know, I knew what the problem was, so I was able to just kind of keep fighting, adjusting through it because I wasn't holding depth anymore. But and I'm not a good shooter like yourself anyway, so if it seats 10 thousandths different, probably ain't gonna notice for me.
Sure.
But that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that can give a lot of fits. You get those stems to flare, and then they're binding on that bullet channel.
Right.
And now you get inconsistent seating depths and or marks on the bullet differently. It's making a different contact point. And, that's something you're touching on, being that we're so focused on the concentricity and that thinner wall of the stem to keep everything, about half a thou interference fit. There's a lot of...
If I have my RCBS die, that there's a lot of good RCBS dies. I don't mean any negative towards that, but I'm not constrained by that channel. I could hit the same pressure and flare that RCBS stem out and never notice it.
Sure.
Because it's not stopping anywhere. So it's, and that's you want to get a customer hot and bothered, charge them over $100 for a really good seating die, and their RCBS one is seating just fine, holding consistently. I mean, I can't blame them. That's what it is. But usually we can talk through and figure out what the problem is.
Yeah.
And kind of get
with that concentricity and that tighter channel, you mentioned how sometimes that wall of that stem isn't very thick. Well, the thinner material you have on a contact point, more pounds per square inch in one little area is kind of possibly the culprit here. But also, we're really keen on that concentricity part, and going forward, like you said, we're still playing with different designs and things of that nature. And a lot of guys will call in and be like, "Hey, do you have a specific stem for a VLD?" Right. It's like, no, I mean, we have, our universal, it's basically a universal stem. We try and just keep up with, the change in the bullets. But certainly, we talk about, well, it could be your brass prep, could be this. Well, possibly, something happened in the manufacturing of that stem where maybe it just got a burr on it, or it didn't, the radius on it isn't just perfect for that bullet. And that's another option. Guys can send in their stems, send in a bullet, and we can match that profile of that bullet to that stem, and that usually alleviates a lot of that issue as well.
So kind of the benefit of that service is we actually have them send in the components as well, so we can, also check the cases, maybe get some insights into what's going on in their process. If they've got if you send it in, you've got a huge donut at the next shoulder junction. Well, we see that, and we can help point that out, and I mean, we still polish match the stem to the bullet as best we can. But at least then you've kind of got, you get more out of that service than just that. There's definitely other companies that everybody is, when we looked at the sheer volume of different profiles and, makeups of bullets there are now, every manufacturer is having same struggles and trying to keep up with that. And everybody's handling it different. Hornady will say this, you need this stem with this bullet. And Reddings has a VLD stem and a standard stem. We've just always tried to make it as universal as possible. And I'd say that need for a custom polished stem service is more often not something you need than what you need. But it's been our way of kind of filling that part of the market of that more custom needs. And a lot of times we do find there's something else going on here.
Yeah, actually, you brought up a really good point. That carbon donut you can get at the neck shoulder junction. I don't care how good your brass process is. If you're seating a bullet into that, that is like hitting a rock. I
Right.
mean, you are not getting past that without some sort of damage going on.
Right.
So,
Right. And again, it's just a huge number of variables. And when we look at every problem you have in the rest of your process is going to surface when you seat a bullet. So I don't know how many times I get a call of like, I've got a short action die, I've got Lapua brass, and I've got this bullet, the best bullet on the market, and I've spent all kinds of money, and your die is damaging our bullet, which it is. That's what's doing it. But it's the buildup of all those other things that can really create. I've seen where it's they can seat just fine into a dummy round, but then they put powder in it, and now they've got a problem.
Yeah, compressed load.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's it's not a compressed load because I've got all kinds of room for that brass, for that powder to move in the case. But like powder's like stomping through a pile of sticks. I mean,
Yeah.
your foot ain't going to the bottom. It doesn't just dissipate like sand. So
Right.
that can be a thing. So then sometimes maybe running through a long drop tube or something like that to compress it so the bullet doesn't have to can make a world of difference. But Forster's been, I mean, we certainly move a lot of seating dies, and it's something we take a lot of pride in, and we're going to continue to kind of be flexible and fluid with the market because what works today may not be what works tomorrow on that. And that's been, it's probably one of those, if I'm a new company coming into the reloading market making tools, this might be an easier problem to solve in some ways, but because you don't have all those other
Set in stone processes.
yeah, historical constraints and just but I mean we're certainly not ones that are made, we've always done it this way, we've got to do it this way. That's not necessarily Forster, but we do like look over our shoulder and check our mirrors before changing lanes because like you try to knee jerk react to some of this stuff and that can be worse than not. And that's why I think we're, you, Josh, doing a lot of testing for us. And we've kind of tried to take that more, ingrained in the PRS crowd. That's certainly, you got a lot of variables in that crowd, and you're certainly a critical market.
Yeah. I mean, hell, you got guys there, everything from bench rest and F-class practices, super down to the, teeth and skin on some of those guys. And then the next guy's like, I just shoot a BR, throw 30 grains of Argot behind a 105 hybrid and it's going to shoot good. Doesn't matter,
So what, I mean, Josh, I guess, how did you get into Forster looking at this? I mean, I'm sure probably 5 years ago shooting PRS, you weren't like, well, I've always dreamed of looking at what issues there are with seating dies.
Yeah, so it was probably 2023 gap grind, I believe it was. And funny, I grew up probably 45 minutes from Forster and hadn't even heard of them until a few years ago. Just such a smaller company and not a lot of marketing out there, so to speak. And that's something Forster's kind of lacked in the past that I think they're really trying to step up nowadays. But so 2023 gap grind, Vince from the office reached out to me, and he had known my good buddy Garrett, who wrestled, and Vince and their family are big wrestlers, so they were kind of acquaintances through that. And Vince asked Garrett, because he seen Garrett was shooting some PRS, and asked if he'd want to go to gap grind, and Garrett be the pro for Vince being the AM. He just wanted to get his feet wet in it. And Garrett had some things going on. He couldn't do it, but he's like, reach out to Josh. He's a real good shooter. He's been shooting for a while. He'd be a good guy to go with. So Vince reached out to me, and I was like, well, I actually kind of, my wife and I, Megan, have plans on and going and shooting that. He's like, well, I wasn't that set on going. Would you maybe just want to go, shoot for Forster, like take the sponsor spot and go shoot for Forster? I'm like, man, really? Like, absolutely. Thank you. Like that was awesome. So kind of fast forward a little bit. During that time, I'd been doing line work. I was in construction for about 10 years, and I was every day just looking for a way to get into the firearm industry, because I started shooting PRS. Actually, my first match was in 2019, the fall of 2019. And the way it kind of fell into place was, Dad and I have always been into hunting. I've had a BB gun in my hand since I was 3-4 years old, since I could walk basically, and then kind of graduated up to 22s, and then deer hunting, shotguns and muzzleloaders, and then rifles. In Illinois, we can only rifle hunt coyotes and stuff. So we had 22 250s and 220 Swifts, just load them, at Mach Jesus and hold top of their back to 400 yards. That was our long range, back then. I actually had a custom rifle built 2016 on an Impact Action. I didn't even know who Impact was at the time. Just the gunsmith I was talking to was like, hey, this is the new hotness. Spend a couple $100 extra bucks and get this Impact. You'll thank me later. And thank you. The number one rated action in the PRS for 5 years running now, or possibly more. But anyway, had this 6XC. I basically just hunted coyotes with it. 2019 comes. Dad calls me, hey, you ever seen this PRS stuff? It's on YouTube. Check out a video. So I check it out. He's like, what do you think? I'm like, I don't know. Looks kind of cool, but not so sure about going and competing, in front of people and stuff, just timid. He's like, well, load your shit up. I signed us up for a match in Wisconsin. So a couple weeks later, we're going to a match, and I didn't sleep that night. The whole ride home, I'm looking up what's the next thing I'm buying. I'm hooked instantly. Well, then like a year later, I'm like, well, I've been reloading since I was like, Dad taught me how to reload when I was 12 or 13, and been reloading this whole time. How do these guys make barrels? So do a bunch of research on that. Had a local gentleman that kind of helped me, willing to show me what he does. And I'm like, man, I can do this. I've always been hands-on and mechanically inclined. Read a lot of books, and then, a bunch of YouTube. And next thing I know, I got a lathe in the garage and started turning my own barrels. And about a year and a half of doing my own and seeing the results I'm getting, like, I can maybe do something bigger with this. And so I decided to start my business, JE Precision Shooting, and started spinning barrels for other competitors and hunters alike. And so back to the whole Forster thing, work was getting slow around here for line work. The layoffs were coming. I was kind of laid off at the time, and I was just like, man, any chance Forster would maybe have an opening or something in the near future? And you guys are kind of like, well, we might have something coming up here. We got some older guys and things are moving around, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward like a year, and you guys called me up again and said, hey, you still interested? I'm like, heck yeah, man, I'm ready to be, full-time in the industry. My business is kind of like touch and go, so it can't quite pay the bills, but so I still need something solid, but also just wanted to be in the industry. So I started working for you guys April 1st of 2024, and started out running machines for you first, a couple months making die bodies and stuff, and it seemed like you guys were coming down from the office, knowing my experience with loading, like, hey, have you ever seen this? I got a guy asking. And after a couple months of that, it's like, let's just bring you in the office, let's do some R&D with you, and you can help with tech emails and tech calls. So that's kind of where we're at today with that. So
Yeah, I mean, and we're Forster's really trying to grow in some of that gunsmithing market by starting to make chamber reamers and stuff. And I mean, we certainly cut a lot of small chambers in terms of dies, but and like you said, Forster, we haven't always been. A lot of people in Lanark, Illinois, don't know Forster's there or what we do. They've always had a good, solid name in the industry. Even with our coax reloading press and some of that, but like we never really had the production or the marketing and things to be able to really push product. We were selling everything we made, and we just plain weren't making enough. Now we're trying to make some more, trying to build into some more things, still in the same small factory we have, still have our lead guy in the shop. Dave Smith has been there for over 30 years, so that consistency is still there. But really getting into the PRS market, we had Rich Mockelt's a retired Sierra Bullets technician that was a really bench rest shooter, and actually John Whidden at Whidden Gunworks was on our pro staff for a long time. We've always kind of had our finger on the pulse of some really good shooters and things in the market. And now it's more than that. We've got you in there as kind of the pulse, some pulse flowing through Forster, and we hopefully have some of the capacity and the knowledge to back it up, so we can keep doing some more active improvements on things like the seating dies and such. And we're a small enough company, 30 some people, that like when we have to adjust for a seating stem, now Hornady has the gold tip and the super soft jacket and all this. Now we can like really come back and, we can be really nimble in changing and adjusting for that, as opposed to having 3,000 employees and 800 stems on the market that now aren't worth a darn, so.
Right.
So, yeah. And I think we really hope to kind of do some more conversations like this and look things up so people can kind of know what we're thinking and be another honestly avenue for people to follow back up to and say, hey, Josh said I got 1,000 neck tension. That's okay. But when I do your hillbilly test, it just shoves right into the brass. Well, that's good information for us to know and get out there. So customer service has always been important to us.
That is the main thing I've noticed, even since working here. Everyone's so tight knit, and it's we really take pride in that customer service.
Right. I mean, I own part of Forster, and I was, we answer the phone to talk to a guy on how to set the jaws up for his press this morning. I mean, that's you have to stay in the trenches with that stuff, especially as this is changing, and now shooting our own PRS matches and loading my own crappy ammo for it. That's all the better. I mean, so yeah, appreciate the conversation, Josh, and we'll have another one here soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
You bet.